And good afternoon, racing fans. Welcome to Hawthorne Racecourse for a Thursday afternoon of thoroughbred action. Jim Miller and Emily Gullikson down here in the PointsBet Sportsbook. Emily, it is a beautiful day for racing today. We're racing Thursdays and Sundays right now. We start with Wednesday racing next week. So that's a nice thing to add that third day of racing. It's been so dry. It's good for being on the turf, but we got to use the sprinklers quite a bit too.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, the weather, it's like you said, it's gorgeous. We're getting into that best part of the year. A little windy, so we'll see how that plays, but otherwise, I mean, no complaints. I'm sure the horses like it when it has that little Christmas in the air. I know at least my dog does. He's very spirited when we go out for walks.
Well, I'll tell you, the return and I guess the start of turf racing has been so good to you. And you're good. You're kind of covered for the meet. When you give out a 45-1 shot on top, it puts you in a great spot. But you've been solid on the turf all meet long. Modifier earlier on in the meet ran really well for you. So it is. It's nice to see grass racing there. It's just a nice mix, a good quality of race usually too.
Yeah, mentioning that, it does kind of flatter my kind of style of play as far as form cycle and pace and all those factors, especially being, with those prices at this time of the season, is really understanding which horses are kind of pointed towards it. And especially we see that with like meets, the longer meets. Woodbine is a really good example because they start in April and they go all the way through December. And right at the beginning of the meet in those races, it's not necessarily the quote unquote best horse. It's the horse that's best suited to those conditions. And so you can find some opportunities because there's always going to be the play on the horse that looks the fastest or looks the quote unquote best horse in the race. And with the horse last week, Gray Streak, it was one of those where it was like, this horse has races that can win, and this is going to be the time. And whether that's right or wrong, sometimes we forget that, right? In terms of this being a gambling game, is you've got to take advantage of those opportunities. They don't always work out, but when they do, we saw you can get rewarded because that was a type of race where there was a lot of ways to go, and this is a horse that was probably going to get lost on the board and did, and it worked out.
And the thing is, you talk about value. Value is important, and we talked about it for the Triple Crown races thus far. Mage in the Derby was a value at 15-1. Mage in the Preakness at 7-5, not a value there. And you have to do that when you're looking at any race. And then sometimes there's horses that are just going to be a short price that you say, okay, like Au revoir, we knew she was really good. Sometimes, hey, you accept the favorite and you move on. Other times where you can find some value, you find some value. Now, today is May the 25th. It's an important day because we're 1 month away from the Horse Players Invitational at Hawthorne and 1 month away from the Hawthorne Derby. So that was kind of the reason I looked to the race I did for our Saturday feature, because the Club Hawthorne OTB is open each and every day. And the Saturday feature is at Santa Anita. It's the Triple Bend. It's race number 8. It's 7/8 of a mile. The reason I say it is you go back to last year. CZ Rocket raced on the day of the Invitational last year and almost won. The horse ran a huge race last year, and this is a horse that's in the Triple Bend. It's 7/8 of a mile here, 4-year-olds and up, and we're gonna get into the Hawthorne card after this, but it's a really intriguing race here, Emily, because you can look a lot of different ways, but I wanted to start with the 9-year-old gelding. He's earned over $2 million on his career, but CZ Rocket every once in a while just seems to kind of pop with that massive race.
He does, and the fact that, it really is a credit to the connections and this horse just to be such a solid runner, still at 9, still wants to race. I know they've tried to think about retiring him a couple times, and he's just telling them, I want to run, which you love to see it when they want to run. And they're going to wheel back in 2 weeks. He's coming out of a race, a 6-furlong allowance. It was a conditional allowance. Broke a little bit slow in that race, but still earned a pretty solid speed figure. It is worth noting a 3-horse field, but again, coming back in 2 weeks, coming off that slight freshening, should be sitting in the right spot. They draw outside. Vasquez has been aboard this horse in the past. Being able to get familiar with him back again, blast out. Could be sitting on the right race. I mean, the race kind of starts and could be a price, as you mentioned, in terms of value, because Forbidden Kingdom is one of those horses that just always takes money.
Always takes money, and it's going to take money again here, because you look at kind of the pace complexion of the race. Forbidden Kingdom is probably the pace of the race, comes from the barn of Richard Mandela, and the horse is as honest as they come, but it's a 4-year-old who's a little bit more lightly raced. 10 starts, 8 of 10 on the board, 3 of those coming as victories. The last out was at 7/8 of a mile, and the horse showed that speed and finished second. I guess that's the one thing that would concern me a little bit in here, is just the distance. I don't know if 7/8 is the right distance, because it's weird. You see 5/8 the horse can win at, or 5.5, and then you see a route race where the horse can win. 7/8 at the one turn is kind of a quirky distance too.
Yeah, Yeah, it is. I mean, this horse in general, he's been one of those horses. He's been able to run fast races. His speed has been able to carry him to run those competitive races and finish in the money. And sometimes he's flattered because of those two factors. A lot of his 2 wins early on, even he won on debut first out, but he was able to make easy leads. He was able to get lone. He had the track profile in his favor, the race shape in his favor, and then when he doesn't have that, he's been a little bit exposed. I mean, last out there was no real excuse. He had that lone lead. He had a softer pace. Maybe it was the timing because he has those layoff lines throughout his career, but kind of one that for me is just a little bit tough to trust, especially when he's always going to be a short price.
And that's important to talk about because we talk about value, and the thing is, like the My Racehorse group, it's always a great group. It's a lot of owners getting in with shares of racehorses, and they are very supportive of the racehorses, but they always bet. So you look through the lines. I mean, you don't see any line. I think the highest price is what, 6-1 for any of the 10 races. But there's a whole lot of asterisks there because it's favorite, because they do. They bet, and they bet early. And when they bet early, then the horse opens as a favorite, and everybody kind of follows the racehorse. So when you're looking for value, you probably do have to look elsewhere. Now, you look a couple of notches lower than that. Spirit of Makina is a horse that's interesting. Only 4 lifetime starts. 3 of those have come as victories. And this is a horse that was a winner against Graded Company in that last out. So coming off Lasix didn't seem to bother it. The distance didn't seem to bother the racehorse either. It wouldn't surprise me if this one can possibly repeat that effort.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely. I think he's the horse to beat. I just looked at the morning line. He's listed as the 8-5 morning line favorite. Yeah, because it just came out. But a horse that's really, he's never done anything wrong throughout his career. And this even goes back to his debut, which at that time I was handicapping full-time for Brisnet. Yeah. And I remember that race. I was like watching him train. He had a couple setbacks prior to the debut, some physical issues, but had been training really forwardly. Caught the field because I think he was a price that first out.
Yeah, 41-1, yeah.
Yeah, because there were some horses in there, and we see this a lot, kind of that have those running lines like Forbidden Kingdom, that like run those big speed figures, but then just kind of figure out a way to get second or third.
Right.
I was watching him work, and I was like, this horse can run. I know there's other horses in here that have run some fast figures, but they're the type of horses that, without excuse, come up short on the win end, and this guy might pop at a price, and he did, and he's validated that form ever since. And coming back in this spot, he's going to come in fresh off that 77-day freshening. Papa Pedromo has a pair in this race, albeit making his first start for the barn, might need a race. So I think Spirit of Makina is very well met and looking for that back-to-back graded stakes win.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me by any means if this horse is in the mix. The horse on the inside is Midnight Mammoth. This is a horse that's intriguing too. Comes out of a grade 2 in the last out. I'm curious to see how the horse handles the distance. Has never gone 7/8 of a mile. Everything else pretty much seems to be around 2 turns. Sometimes when these horses that are speed horses around 2 turns turn back, then they tend to rate a little bit and run on late. What do you make of this move here with Midnight Mammoth?
Yeah, it is an interesting move. Yeah. I had the same thought as you. He's just kind of an interesting horse. I mean, you can even go back to the beginning of his career because you don't see this often. It's a horse that started out for Baffert and didn't do anything in his first 2 starts and was actually running for the higher maiden claiming tag. So moving away from that barn, a lot of times the Baffert horses don't really improve. Right. But this one has been kind of the exception to that rule. This horse has actually kind of shown he's getting better and better. So for them running in here, I don't see why not. I mean, they have a horse that's in good form. Maybe they'll find out if he's versatile enough to handle the 7 furlongs. He has some adversity, but at the same time, you could make a case. He's a horse that's just getting better and finding himself in the right time and place.
He's a little bit intriguing. I think he's going to be a decent price.
Yep.
Positivity, the 3, is one that I'm curious about too, only for the fact that the horse was running in Southern California, then goes over to Dubai, runs 3 starts in Dubai last February and March, and then is away for 13 months. But they brought the horse back into grade 3, and the horse ran okay in that last out. I mean, there were only 5, and they finished a 3rd out of that field of 5. You tend to wonder if that second start back off the layoff should be an improvement. I don't know if it's an improvement to compete or not, but it is. It's an interesting racehorse to me in this spot.
Yeah, I gave this horse a look for those reasons because you'd kind of just expect traditional handicapping, that second off the layoff, especially this type of horse, to move forward. But as far as his visuals, back on April 22nd, he was kind of lugging out around the turn. He did finish 3rd in there, but the top 2 finished clear of the rest. It was kind of a 3rd by default. I thought the race strength maybe a little bit weak. But again, if you're kind of making the case that this horse would come back with a big effort, this would be the time. And I think it is encouraging, given that long layoff, that they come back in 35 days. There's not another layoff line since. And they also come back in graded stakes company, which this is a horse that you know, they had run it for a claiming tag in the past, so they could have had that option they run here. So it might be the time that he does pop. I'm going to have to maybe try to find some works on him to see how he's training. But that was just the one thing that concerned me, but I could certainly see it.
Yeah, and you mentioned George Papapadromo had 2 in here. The other one is Howbeit. Don't completely dismiss Howbeit. This was the horse that defeated CZ Rocket at Santa Anita last October. This was also a horse that they put $100,000 into the claim box to say, hey, we're going to jump in and claim this horse. And as a 6-year-old gelding, you have to think you have something there behind this racehorse. So I think Howbeit could be a horse that could be dismissed a little bit off those recent races, but probably shouldn't be because they think there's some value with this racehorse.
Yeah, it is a very kind of interesting spot, and there's a lot of ways to read it. Certainly that, obviously that in 10 in there, you go back, he has the graded stakes sprint, as you mentioned, that common race. Did get a little bit of a setup. That race was kind of slowing late, got the lucky bob. Glatt was very live at the time, but maybe the 7 furlongs off the layoff, maybe that's a little bit of a concern. Yeah. And also too, we can already start to think about timing because so many of these barns point towards Del Mar.
Yep.
And this could be the type of horse that they're thinking, we claimed him, he's got a good record at Del Mar. Maybe this is the horse that they're going to end up showing up there and will do some good for them. But definitely an interesting horse all around.
Yeah.
Especially, you know, to follow. If they don't run well here, I would maybe just kind of keep a mark that maybe this wasn't the ideal spot. Maybe entered to fill the race too.
Well, and you're looking at, because again, it's a $100,000 claim and it's a gelding. It's not like it's some colt that's heading off to the breeding shed after. So they're claiming the horse as a racehorse. Regardless, it's a very good race for the Triple Bend. Make sure you check that out. Santa Anita card, pretty solid card on Saturday throughout. All right, here at Hawthorne, we have a good card today for this Thursday afternoon. Sunny skies, a fast track, firm turf. As you mentioned, we want to see how the wind plays. The winds are out of the east, so it's a tailwind in the stretch today. So that changes a little bit of the complexion of the races. Usually it tends to kind of favor those coming from a bit out of it, but we want to watch a couple of races to see. 3 on the turf, 2 sprints. The other one's 7.5, and that's the opener, Emily. $15,000 claimers. Now winners of 3 go 7.5. Only scratch the also eligible, the 11, TJ Munning, so you get a field of 10. And you look at the board right now, Forward Curve, a horse that you expected, I know, to be the favorite, as did I, sits at 3-1. You can go a few different ways. I did. I know you did as well. I think you started out with Pinballer in this spot a little bit, right?
Yeah, I did, yeah. And it's actually a horse that is currently sitting at 5-1, but actually opened as the favorite. I've been keeping in mind, you know, the pool size then, but he's been drifting, so maybe could drift up a little bit more from that. But as far as Pinballer, the case just being a horse that's in form right now, has the races, he's getting back to the turf, looks like a turf horse to me, been kind of waiting to get back on the grass, and again, just looks like the timing, again, has that early money, which sometimes you want to see, could drift up, but again, the surface switch was very positive on this horse, and that's kind of what I keyed off of.
Yeah, I thought could be in the mix as well, too. Memphis Prayer, a horse that I know you and I both thought had a shot in here as well, comes from the barn of Hugo Rodriguez. Hugo having a good start to the meet. I think there's enough pace to chase after in here. And again, with the way things might set up in that tailwind, this is a horse that should rate and come running at him late. So Memphis Prayer, a horse that I put in the mix. It was a good effort in that start, 2-back. And that was against $25,000 company. Now they're in for the $15,000 price tag, so I think they're well placed in this spot too.
Yeah, absolutely. And another horse that hasn't had the chance to run on the turf, but from a physical standpoint, this horse should handle it and move up on the surface. And as you mentioned, the barn's been doing good work, so I think it's pretty live in this spot.
The other one in here is Gate Crew, the 7. And Gate Crew is a tough horse to figure because only 2 lifetime victories, 7 runner-up efforts on the turf. So you say you look at the board right now and you see 8-1 on Gate Crew, the 7 horse, and you almost wonder, okay, is this the horse that I just put underneath in the exacta and kind of work from there?
Yeah, and you know, I'm glad that you mentioned that because, you know, it is a horse that has finished first or second. And a lot of those times you can kind of say, all right, this is a horse that hangs, kind of finishes in the money or whatever. But when you're getting some price compensation, currently 8-1, you could also say, well, this horse has the races that are good enough to win, and I'm getting price compensation. I know he tends to come up short, but if I think the 3 is a little bit soft, we see the 9 taking money, a horse we haven't quite talked about yet, bet down a little bit. If you don't really like either of those horses as far as win contenders, you could certainly make the case that this is the spot for a Gate Crew.
And the 2 horses that are taking money, both pretty similar running styles. I think they'll both be pushing things along. So I'm expecting an honest pace in the opener, and we'll see if it comes back to the field and one of our horses gets the job done in race 1. Race 2 today starts at 50-cent early pick 4 wager. We should mention, as always, the pick 4s and pick 5s, just a 15% takeout here at Hawthorne. Win Place Show, lowest takeout in the country, just 12% on the Win Place Show wagers here at Hawthorne. 5.5 furlongs in this spot, Emily. 62.50 claimers, non-winners of 3. Field of 6, you and I think, are in agreement in here, and it comes with the 3, Cairo Summer in this spot.
Yeah, we do agree in this spot. As far as this horse, had a complete excuse last out, took that bump, the jock lost the iron, so can pretty much draw a line through that race, and the form otherwise stacks up. So could just get the right spot, get the right trip in here, and again, the timing on their side as well.
Usually when you lose the irons, the horse kind of goes up, runs up a little bit closer than they want, and then eventually backs out of it. Once Alex Bendezu got back in the irons, then this horse actually still ran on and ended up finishing 4th at a huge price there at odds of 84 to 1. You're back to the sprint today. Bendezu moves over to the 2, Bertrada, who I can totally understand the move because the horse is going to be your favorite in here. I think Cairo Summer just gets a great setup. I think the horse rates close. There's not a ton of pace in this race, so I'm with you. I'm going to go to Cairo Summer as well in race number 2. Third race on the card starts the pick 6. That carry over $2,090, 3/4 of a mile, 62.50. Now winners of 3 in here. And from this field of 6, I was checking through your notes, Emily. I saw you had some notes on the 2, Speedy G. This was a horse I didn't have in the mix, so I want to see what your thinking was with Speedy G.
Yeah, it's one of those races where I went through and I had a hard time kind of knocking anybody, and just from a pace standpoint, looking at Bourbon Teddy going forward, Ironman Richie going forward. Time Has Come, another horse that has some early speed, maybe the most logical horse, but I wonder if last time was probably the time for them. It was kind of stepping up in class, ran a solid figure off the claim. Another one that makes sense, Diora Store has back races, but hasn't quite been the same since the barn switch. Tea After Ballet, kind of one of those horses that can be a tough read at times. It just kind of came back to Speedy G, where I was like, well, this horse doesn't really have a knock to him, has some buried form in there, and could get the right trip, especially with some of those horses that have early speed, could kind of hook up with each other early, tend to lack finish, and again, just might be the timing and the right price for a barn that could certainly pop.
Yeah, and you may have to look at the price. I think you do have to take a stance one way or the other. Either go with Time Has Come or go away from it and look to many others. The one thing I liked about Time Has Come's last race is that they actually showed that they can rate. Now, the problem is they were kind of forced into that because the horse got away slowly from the gate. So I'm hoping today that the horse, I don't want to say you want to break poorly, but I don't want the horse rushed up into contention because there's some other speed in this race. If that's the case, I think Time Has Come can rate and come running at him late. Chris Amy in the saddle. Last time he rode this horse was 3 back and the horse was victorious, and that was around 2 turns, but I think could get the right setup, but probably going to be a short price there in race number 3. Fourth race on the card, 5.5 furlongs in the 4, 62.50 and on a 2. Field of 7 in this spot. Elias Lopez, you're back with him looking a little bit here. Free Love takes the class drop in here, Emily. It's a pretty significant class drop, but I didn't see a whole lot of other pace really to challenge in this spot either.
Yeah, it's a tough horse, right? Because we saw the class dropper last week, kind of a similar move. And actually it was kind of a different horse because it was a horse that had run really well for 25. Where Free Love, you kind of expected her to run well in that spot because she was dropping from Allowance Company, second off, and just didn't show any run at all. Was really struggling. And so that concerns me when they run like that and then they come back for a drop. That is this horse the same as they were? Now her back numbers certainly fit. Maybe they just, are like, we got to put her somewhere where she can win and we're ready to move on. Maybe that's the case. Their stablemate finished in the money that day. I had a tough read with her, just with those factors. Not one I'm negative on, but not one I'd be looking to kind of bet to win at a short price, especially as there are some other ways to go. Where did you kind of land?
I ended up on Jemez Falls, the 1, and I know it was a horse that you gave some consideration to as well. This is a horse that I thought ran pretty well at the end of last year. I was actually expecting some more out of this horse early on in this meet. And then when I hopped off the horse was when the horse was victorious back on April the 27th and ran a good race. Now they were probably, I don't know, I think it was probably in too tough at FanDuel in that last out. So finding it easier, you move back to Hawthorne, the track you're familiar with. So I like the move out of Ralph Martinez because Ralph's based down in St. Louis at FanDuel Racing, but to ship back up here to the track that the horses run well at, I think it's a good move.
Yeah, I think it is too, and I'm glad that you mentioned that. Going back to that May 9th race, it was cold on the board, which, as you mentioned, this is where the barn is stable. They tend to get bet a lot, and this horse was cold on the board from 7 to 2 morning lines, so sometimes it just says, not the day for this horse. So coming back here, I agree. I think has a big look in this race.
And you could get a decent price because Star of Tomorrow is definitely going to take some action, and Free Love is going to take some action as well in race 4. Fifth race goes back to the turf. 2 turf sprints as part of our late pick 4 wager. Just a 15% takeout on the late pick 4. $10,000 claimers in here, Emily. We scratched the 11 Medway Queen. Uriel Lopez rides the 9 Sense of Self. Field of 10 in this spot. I think we were kind of all over the place for who we looked at, but I know you had some notes actually on Sense of Self in this spot, right?
Yeah, again, it's kind of another horse that sort of aligns with that same angle, a horse that has the benefit of recency, has the positive surface switch, exiting the April 23rd optional claiming race and that second start off the layoff. And the trip and overall visuals last out just kind of looked like a horse that was given the prep, not the best ride, so I could see the rider change making sense, and I thought the finish was sneaky good. It was one of those closing runs that's tough to see when you look on paper. The horse galloped out afterwards. So just one of those that I could project and move forward, and again, going to be a big price, so this is the time to kind of take a shot in a race that I wasn't too crazy about. I mean, get none makes sense, but just seems kind of like a short price, which again, on a horse that's giving up some recency.
I like the note you make on Sense of Self for the gallop out, because our TV crew does an excellent job with picking up the gallop out for that reason alone. You want to see, once the horses get past the wire, who's kind of just tiring and shoring up and pulling up by the 7/8 pole, then who's kind of just going on through the turn. And Sense of Self was one of those that was going on through the turn, so it is worth a look. I'm kind of the similar way. Again, it's intent for getting back to the turf. I went to the 10 Rare Action Attack in here. The last couple of starts, not great by any means, but you look back to some of the starts last fall, it's a 3rd and a 4th place effort, both on the grass, both in turf sprints here. I think there's enough pace because April's Gem can show speed, Smile at the Storm can show speed, Stacy Attack, and First Squadron. So if you have 4 of them duking it out, maybe it's one of those where you just work out a trip, settle back. Javier Tavares finishes well on a racehorse, and maybe this is a horse that can also run by. So 2 horses that should be pretty good prices too.
I like that pick. You know, and also looking at that race, it kind of was we were talking about looking at Horseshoe Indianapolis.
Yeah.
It was one of those days down at St. Louis, down at FanDuel, that it was very windy. It was tough to make up ground. It was a pace-setting chalk winner. They were cold on the board, rare action attack, so could just follow that same second-off pattern. I have no issues with that pick. I think it's very clever.
Hopefully we can get 2 horses there at nice prices and team up for a good exacta there in race number 5. In the 6th, $15,000 maidens. They go 3/4 of a mile. Field of 8 lines up in the 6th. We both had this horse in the mix. Manny Perez has 2 in here. He's got Black Russian and he has Gust of Wind. I picked Black Russian 3rd and Gust of Wind 2nd. I did pick Fabricator on top. But Black Russian, I know you gave consideration to this horse also, right?
Yes. There's 2 Watkins, 2 Perez, and then some other live bards in the mix. But yeah, starting with the Manny Perez pair, as far as Black Russian, I can give the excuse back on April 30th. Broke slow. It's just a completely messy break. The horse got really ranked, and just from the overall visuals, just looked like a horse that needed the experience and also the cut back to 1 turn. So I like all the changes, even with the timing coming back. And then as far as Gust of Wind, I mean, Gust of Wind is one of those horses that just kind of creates their own issue just as far as the running style and often the rides coming from off the pace, but has been very consistent and just knocking on the door. And if they have some pace to run at, could certainly, you know, make that winning run. But I'm glad you went on the Watkins pair, because I was like, I think both these barns are sending in 2 runners that have intent.
Yeah, and they do. And I mean, going back to Black Russian too, it was 1 work going into a route race over a good track. So should be much better in this spot too. Uncaptured Dreams, a horse that ran at Churchill at that last out, has the ability to show some speed, comes over here to Hawthorne, has faced tougher company throughout the course of his career. This was a horse that was actually claimed for $50,000 too. So, I mean, they're trying to find the spot to win, but Fabricator's the one is the route I went. I thought the race in that last out was okay. Slava Ukraini was a horse I liked in that spot. That horse was able to just kind of get loose and coast along and was never challenged. But I thought this one ran okay. I think the sprint is actually where you want to be, probably settles back and again runs on late. But again, the way the track may play, hey, you can come visit. I mean, if you want it. No, you got to walk around, but if you wanted to visit, that was okay. We're doing good today, so hopefully you can give us a winner. But Fabricator is the one that I'm going to go to there to get the job done in race number 6. In the 7th, we go 3/4 of a mile, $40,000 optional claimers in here. You get a field of 10. Emily, this is a really good race too. I had a tough time on this race. I had a tough time with the line. You go a few different ways. I ended up making Omaha Red the favorite because this horse went off at even money against the Allowance Company in the last out. But so often Omaha Red just isn't able to quite get there in time. but I think the horse is going to be close. The other one that intrigued me was the Tom Amoss runner and Broken Rib.
I kind of went the same way.
Okay.
I think both those horses certainly make sense. And I gave the slight edge to Omaha Red,
Sure.
just in terms of the trip. As you mentioned, has the tactical speed. And looking at optics plot, it's kind of one of those different optics plots because there's the contention, which is a fire, which represents those horses that want to be on or near the lead. But the speed rate being a little bit more moderate, it's a 40 speed rate, so not super slow, but it can sometimes flatter horses that are forwardly placed. And Omaha Red being a square in quadrant 1 doesn't necessarily need the lead.
Right.
You kind of sit off all those kind of circles in that fire contention and get first run, and they're probably going to need it because Broken Rib, being on the opposite end, has that strong closing kick, and if there is contention, there should be plenty of pace for him to run at, and it's going to take a good horse to hold on late because that horse is going to be running.
Yeah, and I like that move for Tom Amoss to come over here for this spot. I mean, to find races at this level and to find enough pace at this level is sometimes hard to do, so you have to search a little bit. He's not afraid to ship this horse up from Kentucky for this spot, so I did go to Broken Rib on top. Going back to Omaha Red, the winner of that last start wasn't Cash. Cash came right on back for a stakes victory in that next out there, so that's a legitimate racehorse. Midnight Escape intrigues me because the horse can show some speed and ran on pretty well in that last. And then Comiskey Park finally figured out how to win in that last time. We talked about it was second. And then the horse was actually really impressive in that last time out too.
Yeah, do you think that turns on the light switch? Because I was thinking
Maybe.
about it. I was like, maybe he's like, you know what? This winning thing is kind of fun. I'm going to
Sometimes
keep
it
doing
does,
this.
right?
Yeah.
Right. The light bulb angle is an angle you have to look to. Sometimes horses just finally figure out how to win, and then they're able to kind of string together races.
Yeah, because his other races weren't bad. He was just, he was settling for those minors. So, so we'll see. It wouldn't be any surprise in here, and could be a price because, as you mentioned, this field is quite competitive. There's a lot of ways to go. Very few would surprise.
Yeah, good quality field there for sure. All right, race number 8, $25,000 maidens go 5/8 of a mile on the firm turf course. Jackpot High Five's growing, $66,924. Scratch the 3-holder hostage, scratch the 11 Chrome Racer. A big one draws in the 12, Be My Bestie, and it kind of changes the complexion for a lot of horses because Be My Bestie's going to be in with a big shot. But Secret Operation, I know you looked at that one a little bit. I thought Blame Nelly for Louis Roussel coming in here could be a factor. Getting Down's the other Ravelli horse. There's a lot of ways you can go in this last race.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the case with Secret Operation goes back to the debut, which from a physical standpoint suggested this horse looks like a turf horse. Hasn't had the opportunity to run the turf. They've had this horse protected and made in special weight company. He hasn't been on the level. So getting those 2 positive changes, they're getting the drop, they're getting the surface switch. If nothing else, at least has the horse in a spot where they should compete. But as you mentioned, there should be plenty of pace. I mean, Ravelli bookending the field with both those horses that have some early speed. Both have kind of shown a lack of finish and are probably going to be short prices, but could certainly pop up at this condition. And Blame Nelly, they had the MTO who didn't draw in, so sometimes that shows intent as well. The only thing is giving up the recency, but other than that, I mean, absolutely fits in this race.
Well, and the thing that's interesting about this race too, Emily, is when I make the line, I only make the line based off who would originally be in the race. So my 120 to 127 points is based off the 10. With Be My Bestie coming in, what that does with Getting Down staying in is probably moves the price up on everybody else in between those horses, because these 2 horses are going to take a lot of action. So a horse like Secret Operation probably goes from 5 to 1 to 8 to 10 to 1. So that changes it. Izzy's Monster, another horse that probably goes up in price, the same with Blame Nelly, because Be My Bestie could go favored in this race. So you have to look at that. You have to look at some value, see if you can make some money in the last. Again, Jackpot I-5 carryover, $66,924. So it's definitely growing, a lot of action going into it. So you want to make sure you jump into that. All right, that's how we see the 8 races today. Again, sunny skies, fast main track, firm turf course. Let's flip back to the opener as we're 14 minutes to post for the first, Emily. Again, it's a tailwind in the stretch today, so we'll be curious to see how that plays. Usually the headwind in the stretch is more of a front end track. Tailwind usually evens things out, maybe even a little bit of a back track. So we'll see if that's the case. But in the opener, we go 7.5 furlongs on the firm turf course. Scratch the 11, TJ Munnings. It's a field of 10 in the first, Emily. $15,000 claimers, non-winners of 3. We look at the board, it hasn't changed a whole lot from when we looked at it at the start of the show. The 3 forward curves still taking action, 3 to 1 favorite. Be Easy is your 4 to 1 second choice in here. but we can go a few different routes. So I'm going to let you start out first with the 4 pinballer. This one currently sits right now on the board at 5-1.
Yeah, this pick was really based on the surface switch, had the back numbers on the turf, has the current form and recency. And then in terms of running style, it's going to have to work a trip in here, but I think there is some positive intent. And as I mentioned earlier, if you missed the first part of the show, opened up as a favorite, has had some drift, so should be a square price. Tough to know where it's going to go from here. But yeah, it kind of starts also too as far as the 3, because the horse you didn't have in the top 3 either. What were kind of your knocks? Was it mostly the layoff?
I just thought it was the pace setup in the race. I thought there was enough speed to go out there where you're coming in off a layoff, not having raced since December. This is a horse that the last time it's on the turf was actually last August. But I thought there were some others that could go. I thought Be Easy could possibly go. I thought Uncle Nick was a horse that might be able to go out there as well, although they do take the blinkers back off. So I'll be curious to see. But Pinballer looked good walking in the paddock. You get a look at that one right there on the screen. So definitely a horse that's intriguing to me. 5-1, not a bad price there. The one horse we both have in the mix, that's Memphis Prayer. Now Memphis Prayer, the one, is my top pick. This one currently sits at 8-1 on the board. You get a look at this one right there at the end of the walking ring. It's going to be the first time on the grass for this runner, but the recent form not bad. Hugo Rodriguez always good on the turf. I thought this horse had a little bit of a shot to pick up the pieces late.
Yeah, and I think the horse, just from my visuals watching the races, looks like a turf horse, so I'm not concerned about the surface switch at all. I think the price is fair, taking some money in the exacta, so not totally cold in here. Yeah, definitely a value type horse that has some versatility, current form, and even intent with that surface switch.
Yeah, now 8-1, pretty good price there. Now the one walking right in front of the one horse in the walking ring is the 7. That's Gate Crew. Gate Crew from the barn of trainer Michelle Boyce. Julio Felix gets the call today. We know Michelle Boyce always does good with all of her horses, but especially on the grass. This one, just the one turf victory, 7 runner-up efforts. But like you said, sometimes when they kind of figure it out, especially if they're an off-the-pace type, sometimes it's that they just don't want to run by. Sometimes they just don't get there in time. But I think at 7-1, that's a really good value on this racehorse.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it too is he was in tougher. He was running in some optional claiming races, some allowance conditions, and since they've dropped him in for the claiming tag, it seems like he's in at least the right company for his abilities and where he's at on current form. And given those claiming races, he hasn't had a chance to run on the turf.
Right.
So he's getting back to his preferred surface. Now he has the class drop on his side, is probably in the right spot to compete, and could certainly win based on that back form and numbers. They're right on par.
Yeah, it's definitely a great way, though, to open the card today. Again, 12% takeout on a win, place, and show wagers. We have a 15% takeout on the pick 5s and pick 4s here at Hawthorne. You see the high 5 carryover right there on your screen, so a whole lot coming up for the opener. Good luck.
Post time for the first race in 10 minutes here at Hawthorne. Dirt track fast. Turf listed as firm with the rail set at 20 feet out on the turf course. First race starts. The rolling daily doubles, rolling pick 3s, and the 50-cent pick 5. In this first race, scratch number 11, TJ Munnings. 10 minutes till post for the first at Hawthorne. Coming on the track for today's first race, they'll go about 7½ furlongs on a firm turf course with the rail set at 20 feet out. Scratch 11, TJ Munnings. That leaves a field of 10. No jockey changes, no overweights. Win, plays, show, exacta, trifecta, superfecta wagering. It starts the rolling daily doubles, rolling pick threes, and today's 50-cent pick 5. 7 minutes till post. They are operating, and here they are. 1 Memphis Prayer, Luis Colon riding to his Uncle Nick with Chris Amy. 3 Forward Curve will be handled by Victor Santiago. Here's number 4 Pinballer, Alexander Bendezu up. 5 is Powerful Man with Emmanuel Giles. 6 Son of Grace, Diego Sanchez. 7 is Gate Crew and Julio Felix. 8 Look Away, Javier Tavares. 9 Be Easy, Abel Lescano. 10 is Command Central, Olaf Hernandez riding. Number 11 is scratched. They'll be at the gate in 6 minutes. Turf firm, rail set at 20 feet out for the opener. Dirt track is fast. Racing fans, little time remains for you to wager on today's first race here at Hawthorne, which features rolling doubles, rolling pick threes, and the 50-cent pick five. Turf is firm, rail set at 20 feet out for the Thursday opener. Dirt track is fast. Those conditions will remain the same all day long today as we have a gorgeous day weather-wise here in the Chicagoland area. We have two carryovers. The third race, pick six carryover, $2,090. The eighth race, jackpot high five carryover, $66,924. We do thank you for joining us wherever you may be across the betting network. Inner track, off track, comfort of your own home. Anywhere around the world watching us on the computer, we do thank you for joining us today. We are close to starting time for race one at Hawthorne. Moving towards the gate, less than a minute here at Hawthorne. Racing fans are at the starting gate for today's first race here at Hawthorne, first of 8 on the Thursday program. Don't forget, beginning next week, May 31st, we add Wednesdays to our racing schedule. Wednesday, Thursday, Sunday, first race every day we race 2:30. Turf firm for the opener, rail set at 20 feet out. Horses are entering the starting gate for the first at Hawthorne. Waiting for Powerful Man and Command Central. Powerful Man moving up. Command Central will be the last to load. Now they're all in the gate. They're off. Pinballer out for the lead. Uncle Nick showing speed. Far outside, Powerful Man moves up. Then towards the inside forward curve, Command Central rushing up. Son of Grace is next and having a bit of trouble with the turn. Towards the rail, Memphis Prayer. Between horses, Gate Crew. 3 wide ninth, Be Easy and trailing the field, Look Away. And they begin their journey on the backstretch over a firm turf course at Hawthorne. 3 across the track fighting for command. Inside out, Pinballer, Powerful Man, Command Central, 3 wide. Forward curve tracking the top trio in 4th. And then losing a bit of ground was Uncle Nick back to 5th. On the rail, Gate Crew starts to make that Gate Crew on the outside is moving up. Shuffled back, Memphis Prayer, and then to the outside, Son of Grace. Followed by Be Easy, and far, far back is Look Away. They have less than a half mile to run as they move around the far turn. Pinballer has the lead by a length and a half. In second, Command Central. Forward curve takes over third as a Powerful Man backs up. Then to the outside, here comes Gate Crew. Around the turn, they're in the stretch. Pinballer has the lead. Gate Crew coming to him. In between horses, Command Central. Forward curve as clear, sailing along the rail. And here comes Son of Grace out in the center of the course. They're across the track for the final 16th. Son of Grace has all the momentum on the outside. Here comes Son of Grace. And Son of Grace is fastest of all down the stretch to win it. It was Gate Crew second, Pinballer third, tight for 4th. In today's first race, number 6, Son of Grace finished first. 7, Gate Crew second. 4, Pinballer third. 3, Forward Curve was 4th. 6-7-4-3 is posted. It's unofficial. 129.70 for the about distance of 7 1/2 furlongs on a firm turf course. Today's first race is official. Running time 129.70. More in a moment. Now returning as the official winner here, 6 Gate Crew. Gate Crew is owned and trained by Earl Hughes, ridden to victory by Diego Sanchez. Prices in a moment.